Hello, I'm Teacher Kelly. We are going to talk about the three branches of the U.S. government today. So the three branches of government, we have the executive branch, the legislative, and judicial. Right now, we are going to talk about the legislative branch. So one way to remember legislative branch, legislative starts with an L and laws start with an L. We'll come back. Remember that for the Kahoot too. Okay, so what is the legislative branch? This branch of government is responsible for making the laws for our country, legislative laws. Congress works in this branch. Congress is made up of two houses or groups of people with a common job. The two houses are the Senate and House of Representatives. So Congress encompasses all of them. Broken up into Congress is Senate and House of Representatives. It is housed in the United States Capitol building. So this is the Capitol building. Let's take a look. All right, on your self-paced lesson, you can control this yourself. But for the sake of this video, I will do a quick turnaround of the Capitol building. So all the way in the distance over here is the Washington Monument. And then over here is where I used to work. And let's keep going. Very cloudy day this day. So that is the Capitol building. All right, the legislative branch. We're going to break up the Senate and the House of Representatives. Okay, so the House of Representatives. The House is a group of 435 men and women elected from the 50 states. The population of a state determines how many representatives they can elect. Representatives serve 2-year terms. Specific responsibilities and powers of the House: introduce and pass laws, declare war, introduce amendments to the Constitution. That means you can change the Constitution. Impeach federal officials. Elect the president in case of a tie. So this is the number of representatives after the 2010 census. So every 10 years ending in 0, the United States government counts every single person in the United States. Every single person. So, you know, even people living here illegally or temporarily. So this is the 2010 census. So there also was one in 2020. So there's always 435. But what does change after the census is how many representatives the state might have. So let's say there was a whole bunch of people who moved from California to Texas. We might take some representatives away from California and put them in Texas. So maybe now California has 50 and Texas has 39. And you get the idea. Always 435, but they can move around how many. So this has to do with population. Now you're thinking, well, what about the small states? What about Rhode Island? What about Wyoming? What about all those states that only have one representative? That's not fair. Now California and now Texas, they have a lot more power in the House of Representatives than the smaller states. Well, now we're going to talk about the Senate. So there are 100 senators. Each state, no matter its size, elects 2 senators. So there's the compromise. No matter how big or small your state is, you have 2 senators. So every single person has 2 senators. So now states like California and Rhode Island are on equal ground. So this is the compromise. Our founding fathers couldn't figure out if they should do it by population or each state, so they did both. So the vice president serves as president of the Senate and the tie-breaking vote. So the vice president breaks ties. It doesn't happen very often. So it will be something very controversial. Usually you would know ahead of time and the vice president would plan to be there. So actually the vice president that spent the most time in the Senate was our very first vice president, John Adams. Ever since him, they don't spend a lot of time in the Senate, but technically the vice president is president of the Senate. Senators serve 6-year terms. Because state vote at different times, about 1/3 of the senators are running for re-election every 2 years. Now you're thinking, but 3 doesn't divide into 100 evenly. Well, we have 33, and 34. So yes, every 3 years, 34 of them are up for re-election. So you can Google if one of your senators is up for re-election if this is an election year. So senators are running for re-election every 2 years. Once the senator gets in, they stay in for 6 years. But every 2 years, we have some senators from some states running. All right, here are the responsibilities of the Senate. Very similar to the House, but a few small differences. Introduce and pass laws, declare war, and approve treaties. Introduce amendments to the Constitution, hold trials for impeached officials and determine guilt or innocence. That is one thing that the House does not do. Approve presidential appointments, also something the House does not do. Legislative branch review. Who? Congress, which is the House of Representatives and the Senate. And their responsibility is to make laws for the country. Now, we are going to talk about the executive branch, the USA executive branch. All right, I can explain the role and responsibility of the executive branch. What is the executive branch? This branch of government is responsible for carrying out or enforcing the laws made by Congress. The president can also sign or veto laws from Congress. Veto means he or she says no. The head of the executive branch is the president. However, he doesn't do all the work for the branch. The vice president, cabinet, and other offices work to complete the job of the executive branch. The headquarters of the executive branch is in the White House. So the president lives in the White House and meets in the White House and enforces the laws. The 3 branches. So the executive branch is the president, vice president, and the cabinet. Our president right now is Joseph Biden. He is the 46th man to serve as president of the United States. He ran as the nominee for the Democratic Party. He was previously a U.S. Senator and Vice President under Barack Obama. Our current Vice President is Kamala Harris. She was a senator for the state of California. She is the first woman to hold the office of Vice President. She is also the first Black woman and woman of Asian descent to hold this office. Just what is the cabinet? So no, it is not this type of cabinet. So the cabinet is a group of men and women who advise the president on different parts of the government. Some parts of the government represented in cabinet: agriculture, defense, education, energy, homeland security, health and human services, treasury, transportation, and veteran affairs. Now, we are going to talk about the Supreme Court. Right, so we have the judicial branch. One way you can remember: judicial, judge, jury. It all starts with J, so remember the judicial branch has to do with court. I can explain the role and responsibility of the judicial branch. What is the judicial branch? This branch of government is responsible for interpreting the laws. This means to make sure the laws follow the Constitution. The judicial branch also makes sure justice is provided to all citizens. The Supreme Court is the head of the judicial branch. Lower federal courts are also part of this branch. So whatever state you live in, your state Supreme Court would be number 2. So remember that the judicial branch is responsible for interpreting the laws. All right, the branches: the judicial branch has Supreme Court and other federal courts. Facts about the judicial branch. The president nominates a person to sit on the court. However, to keep presidential power in check, the nominee must be approved by the Senate. So you see how all 3 branches check each other? The president appoints the judge, but has to be approved by the Senate. Justices serve for life unless they decided to retire or if they are impeached. There are thousands of cases sent to the Supreme Court every year. The Supreme Court only hears very few cases, and they choose the ones they will hear. So they get about 7,000 to 8,000 cases every year, and they only hear about 150 or so. Who is in the judicial branch? The Supreme Court and other federal courts. What is their responsibility? To interpret the laws, to make sure they follow the Constitution. Let's review. The Constitution created a government with 3 branches. Each branch is responsible for running part of the country. It is also responsible for keeping the other branches in check. So, the executive branch. Their role is to enforce the laws, and the head is the president. The legislative branch makes the laws, and the head is Congress. The judicial branch interprets the law, and the head is the Supreme Court. Which branch of government do you think is the most powerful? And you can do this in your self-paced lesson. But what I would like you to do is I would like you to tell me why you think that branch is the most powerful. You can tell me that on the classroom page or write to me. So I will give you a second to think about it, or you can pause this video and think about which branch you think is the most powerful. So now that you've thought about that, technically the answer is supposed to be none of them. They're all supposed to be equal, but many people, including full-grown adults, argue over who they think is the most powerful. So this one is a matter of opinion, but I would like to know why you think the way that you do. Thank you for this lesson. I hope this gave you a really good overview of the 3 branches of government.